On the island of Sodor, there is an electric railway. Branching off the Northwest Railway main line at Kildane, it runs through the middle of the island before meeting the Culdifell Railway at Kirk Machan. From there, it continues to the walled town of Peel Godred before finishing at an aluminium plant just beyond the town. The line is run by 4 electric engines, who draw their power from wires overhead. One afternoon, 2 of those engines were waiting in the shed at Kildane. "Now, you will need to take my 3 o'clock goods to Peel Godred, as I am taking a football special," Jeffrey said. Andy frowned, slightly disappointed. "Why do you get to take all the football specials?" Andy asked. It was only his first year here, but there had already been several football specials. The Fat Controller usually arranged them whenever the Sodor Strikers were playing at their home ground in Kirk Machan. "That's because I'm a careful engine, Andy, not a clumsy buffers like you. I never have accidents." He was referring to an incident that had happened last week. Andy had accidentally bumped some trucks at the Peel Godred goods shed, causing a milk tanker to leak. Before Andy could reply, a whistle sounded out in the distance. A moment later, James burst out of the tunnel with the football special. He crossed over onto the branch line. He brought the packed train of football fans to a smooth halt at the platform. He was quickly uncoupled and puffed off to turn around. Andy watched longingly as Jeffrey moved off to pick up the train. James was glad to have a rest as he turned on the turntable. The Sodor Strikers were playing in a semi-final today, and the train had been heavily loaded with football fans. He had a few minutes before Steve was due to arrive with an aluminium train for him to take back. "What's wrong, Andy?" James asked as he spotted the electric engine's glum expression. "It's not fair. Jeffrey always gets to take the football specials. I'm sure the Fat Controller would let you take one, if you asked him," replied James. "The Fat Controller? I don't think I could ask. I mean, I've had accidents." James wheezed. "Don't be silly. Accidents happen to every engine." Further up the line, Steve was waiting with the aluminium train. As Jeffrey passed with the football special, Steve heard something that made him a little concerned. "Jeff's transformer sounds a little off," he said to himself. But before Steve could say any more, Jeffrey was already past. Despite what Steve had noticed, Jeffrey reached Kirk Machan without any further incident. As Jeffrey's passengers disembarked, Culdy arrived with his coach, Catherine, fully loaded. "I'll need a drink," Culdy said to himself. It had been hard work bringing Catherine safely down the mountain. She was normally only about 3/4 full, but today there had been extra football fans coming down to watch the game. Jeffrey glanced over from the standard gauge platform. "You wouldn't need a drink if you were electric," he said smugly. "You could go on all day, like me." "What if you run out of electricity?" Culdy asked. Jeffrey scoffed. "It's generated by a dam just downriver from Peel Godred. We'll never run out." "Never say never," Culdy replied. 3 hours later, the football game was over, with a 2-1 victory to the Sodor Strikers. Dozens and dozens of jubilant football fans crowded the platforms and into the waiting trains. Jeffrey's football special was even heavier than before, as it contained some fans who had caught earlier trains to the game. As he pulled away from the station, Geoffrey felt a slight itch in his transformer, a component which is essential for an electric engine to run. As he picked up speed, the itch got worse and worse. "I'll have to ask driver to look at that when we reach Abbey Station," Geoffrey said to himself. But he didn't get that far. Halfway between Kirk Machan and Abbey, a fizzling sound came from his transformer. Geoffrey suddenly found he couldn't draw power from the overhead wires. All he could do was coast to a halt, powerless, in the middle of the line. Geoffrey's driver quickly ran down the line to Abbey Station to get help. Sean was waiting with a passenger train, and he chuckled when he heard the news. "So, old no mishaps Geoffrey has broken down, has he?" Sean's expression turned serious a moment later. "But we can't leave his passengers waiting, and I don't think I would be able to pull him and his train along with mine." The station master thought for a second. "As I recall, Andy was taking Geoffrey's usual afternoon goods to Peel Godred. He should be returning by now. He'll be right behind Geoffrey." The station master had been right. Andy was just approaching Kirk Machan station, where he was due to pick up some empty coal trucks to take back to the main line. He braked to a halt in front of the station master, who was waving a red flag. The station master quickly explained the situation. "Pushing Geoffrey and a train full of passengers? I'm not sure if I can do it." "Come on, Andy," replied his driver. "We can't leave the passengers waiting." "I suppose not," Andy replied, and with that he set off to rescue Geoffrey. Andy soon reached Geoffrey's train and gently bumped it up behind. He tooted his horn, then began pushing the train with all of the strength he could muster. Slowly, the heavy train began to move down the line. Henry was waiting as the two electric engines pulled into the station. "Did you break down, Geoffrey?" Henry asked. "I might have," replied Geoffrey. Henry quickly took Andy's place at the end of the football special and left for Knapford. Andy stopped next to Geoffrey. "You really shouldn't break down in the middle of the line like that, Geoffrey," Andy said. "Some might say it's a bit clumsy." Geoffrey said nothing as Andy moved off to help him to the shed.